All right, so hey, this is Jonathan Twombly on One Rental at a Time with my guest Michael Zuber today.
How you
So
doing, sir?
we're flipping things around a little bit because I had a question that I wanted to ask Michael. I thought it'd make an interesting topic of discussion. So here I am, I'm in California. I'm speaking tonight at a small invitation-only real estate conference in Pasadena, and um, so last night I had dinner with the guys who were organizing the conference, and they're here in California, and a lot of they're investing in the Midwest mostly, but they all own property here in California as well, and they do invest. This is where they started out,
Mhm.
and so we started having this conversation about, uh, you know, A, why is it that people are so down on California for investing? But B, there seems to be plenty of people making money in California, despite the fact that there's all kinds of stuff, that's unfavorable. So
Mhm.
why is that? And we got into this whole discussion uh, about kind of onerous regulations in California and things like that that make it really hard for developers and for real estate owners. And some of it surprised me a little bit because I was like, wow, this is even worse than New York, which is famous, right? So,
Yeah.
and but then this morning I open up my email and there's an email about how, and I think it might have been on Business Insider or something, about how California is taking some steps to kind of liberalize some of its
Mhm.
regulations to try to make it easier to build. And so what I wanted to ask you, Michael, was, you know, you're obviously heavily invested in California real estate.
Mhm.
So why do you like California despite all the regulations? And B, do you think that the reforms that have gone through, is it just lipstick on a pig, or is this like actually going to really help, even
Okay.
if it helps in a small way? Like, is it meaningful?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things there. One of the reasons why I like California, frankly, is the regulations that are like they're very tenant friendly. That's no
Mm,
secret, but you can plan for them. It's not like they come out of left field, right? So if you happen to go through an eviction, you should plan for 3 months. What does that mean? Well, you budget, you reserve for things like that. The eviction process, once started, is rather predictable. They've added additional things like if a tenant's been in your property for X years and they have to move because of a rent bump, and they added rent control and all these things. But in general, at least as an operator, you can plan for all of them, right? You can work it into your model. Second, I have looked at historically the intense regulation, the intense inability to build cheaply, frankly, as an insurance policy to the downside, right? Because, I went to build a fourplex one time on a piece of land in, I forget the exact numbers, but it was like 90 or 100 grand just to review the property, not get a yes answer,
mm,
just to look at it. I'm like, really? These are the things that happen? So when you can get into the cycle and you can make sure something cash flows day one with fixed rate debt, um, you have that kind of downside protection, which I truly enjoy. Plus, California is a big state. I mean, a lot of people talk about like San Francisco or LA is California. I don't invest in either city. There's this entire kind of region called the Central Valley that is, certainly more red than blue. So there are pieces inside California that lean more red than deep blue, which I appreciate. And I choose to invest in a part of California where the median home price is probably 4x below the state. I think the state's median is like 600 or 700. Where I'm at now is, like 300 or something. So there are ways you can stack the chips in your favor, and that's where I've been for 20 years. So I control my downside and let the upside take care of itself. Now,
so
what have
just on
they
that
done?
just on
Go
that
ahead.
point, before we get into the reforms, I mean, this kind of like relates back to what we were talking about in the last episode
Mhm.
about how capital now, we had the the chase for yield on for a long time as the capital that was typically staying in the coastal markets started going out to Texas and the Carolinas and these other places. And now you're seeing the retrenchment happen, which is what people warned about 10 years ago. But it happened. It's like the cycle was so long, people forgot all about it, right? But now it's happening again. And I didn't quite kind of finish that point in the last episode, so I hope people can piece it together. But this is so what you're talking about though is like on a really ground, sort of ground level, granular way. This is what that means, right? You've got like you're gated here, right? Because even though there's a lot of land in California, you can't build, so supply is constrained. So if you can get your foot on the ladder, you're pretty protected, right? And as long as,
Yeah.
and you, if you understand the regulations and you can plan for it, and you just kind of work that into your business model, then what you're talking about is you're never having a Phoenix type situation where your property, your rents are crashing and your property prices are crashing, you know.
Yeah, let's just talk about the full story, right? The only time I've had to do rent specials was actually 2006. And the reason I had to do that is everybody was buying, right? I remember vividly turning down a couple of tenants because they didn't qualify for credit or income, and they bought a home. So other than that one-off, crazy ludicrous environment, it's the only time we've had to do move-in specials. And even if you want to break it down further, I own apartment buildings and houses. Apartment buildings have had times where rent has been flat. Houses up all the time. Why? Because people want to live in homes. And oh, by the way, people want to live in affordable homes. And even in Fresno now, you can't build a new home for less than 400 grand. I focus way below that median. And, I'm buying the old slumlord junkers who need a lot of work and then put fixed rate debt, fix it up, and hold it forever. So I'm doing everything I can to protect the downside. And when you do that in California, the upside is wonderful, right? The appreciation and all of that is pretty outstanding. And then you get what Gavin Newsom. I am not a Gavin Newsom fan. People watch my channel know that I call him King Newsom because he just makes up rules and acts like he wants and tells us he's a horrible human being. But he's actually implemented a couple things on the residential front that are net positives. He has essentially made it given homeowners the ability to put ADUs in their backyards, right? Accessory dwelling units. You can even turn garages into JADUs, right? Junior ADUs. So there is a path, and it's just starting. I think this is about a year old, where you can essentially turn a single family home into 3 units if you want it. And there's setback rules and things like that, but it's a lot easier than what it would have transpired 2 or 3 years ago, which would have been impossible. On top of that, they've just rolled out something, I think in the last 90 days, that allows you to kind of segment off that unit in the back and sell it individual. Right. So in theory, right, you could buy a house today. In my opinion, you'd want alley access or a corner lot. You could buy a home, assuming the setbacks are right, build another home, sell this one off and keep this one, or, you could do lots of things. So a lot of this stuff is in the very early innings, but I think it is a net positive because we have a housing problem. And oh, by the way, in my opinion, we have an affordable housing problem. The beauty about ADUs is you're going to build them about 800 square feet, somewhere between 650 and maybe 900 based on my research. We need smaller homes for single people for this. We don't need more McMansions for millionaires, but that's all that pencils for the last decade in California. I think, again, kudos to Gavin and team. I think they've done some very wise things that hopefully over the next 2 or 3 years, because, myself included, I don't trust him, frankly. So, I'm trying to do one now. It's proving a little bit harder, but it's so new. But I think it's a net positive. And oh, by the way, if you happen to be a homeowner like I am, I own more than a few, it could really explode values down the line. So again, protect the downside, the upside looks, better and better.
And what about, I was reading today as well that there's this article had mentioned some reduction in red tape around building big projects. Like they were referencing this very large project being built in San Francisco, and about reducing regs around office conversions and things like that. Like, do you see these things as being actually meaningful in terms, because oftentimes what you see is government says it's reducing red tape, but then they go and they make some other red tape to replace and it winds up being a wash, but so do you think that this is actually changing things?
So I think again, I don't generally play in the big development, so I will just give my historical opinion. I think what they're lowering on that side, they're raising somewhere else. I think it will be project by project specific, and it will be for Gavin's friends and no one else, in my opinion. Hope I'm wrong. The second one, the office conversion, I really believe that has legs.
Mm.
I believe if you fast forward a decade, maybe 15 years, I would be willing to bet some significant amount of money that there will be downtown living in San Francisco.
Mhm.
Right now, financial district, very much office and all of that. I think it would be a huge catastrophe if those office all went storage, which is frankly an easier conversion given the
Mm.
footprints. I really do believe and have real it's hope at this point, but I really have real hope that we have pretty significant amount of offices converted to residential. I think that would be a net positive, and that would set San Francisco up to come back. Frankly, you make it more of
Yeah.
a population centric versus in and out commute. You remove a lot of office, so the office that remaining gets higher values. Um, it's a huge hope. I really do hope that that happens. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I have a couple of sort of comments to add on this. One is that it could just be like wishful thinking on my part, but I don't know. I feel like there's starting to finally be a little bit of recognition in some of the blue states. They really have to change their housing policies, because the reason people are leaving, people talk about taxes, but that's actually not really the reason, except at the extreme high end. If you're a billionaire, yeah, maybe it means the tax savings are real if you move to Florida, but for most people, it's not. The issue is the cost of housing, right?
Correct.
And so I think there's starting to finally be this recognition that, like, hey, if they want to compete, they've got to address the housing situation. So New York is now copying California with this ADU thing,
Oh,
just
nice.
very recently. So they're making it easier to build ADUs. I still don't think that. I mean, it's helpful, but I don't think that that's the real issue. I think the real issue is the all the restrictive zoning and the difficulty of just building in general. But I think there's starting to be a recognition about that. The other thing too is I think that, there was this impulse starting in probably like the 1920s, but it really got rolling after World War II, where there was this idea that you should like segregate different functions of human existence into different areas. So like work should be here. And this, a lot of this was in response to the automobile, right? But it was like work should be here, living should be here. They shouldn't be mixed up together for God knows what reason. Because historically, everybody, if you think about where did people work, they worked in the shop below where they lived, right? Or they worked, they had a farm, right? So they worked and lived in the same place. It's only like recently that we have this idea that you're supposed to like live one place and work another place. And you don't see this in other countries as much as the US. But I think that's finally getting undone. And frankly, that's just better for everybody. Like if there are people living in downtown San Francisco, it's better for all the businesses there, right? All those
Totally
businesses
agree.
that were like existed on serving lunch to people can now serve lunch and dinner to people, right? Or like it just makes so much more sense to have people living where they work.
Totally
It's
agree.
better for the environment. It's better for your mental health, like not having to commute. It's just so this is something that I really hope is going to take over, is going to like take on steam, where they just undo this like business zoning, all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's just dumb, right? So I think this is encouraging. Maybe this will be the silver lining that comes out of the pandemic, is that it undoes this kind of really silly. Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah, I think, I really, again, I am not a San Francisco fan. I think San Francisco is so horrible today. I canceled my season tickets, which was a lifetime goal, because I felt it was unsafe to walk to the game. My hope is it does come back and it's beautiful. And I hope somebody makes $1 billion buying offices and making apartments. Somebody will, but there's still more pain to come. But I think I generally have hopes for San Francisco.
Well, on that happy note, I think we should call this
Call it
episode
a day.
call it a day.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Enjoy California. Enjoy your speech.
I will. Thanks so much.
Uh-huh.